This is more than a war against terrorism. This is a war against the citizens of all countries. The current elites are creating so much fear that people don't know how to respond. But they must remember this is a move to implement a world dictatorship within the next 5 years. There may not be another chance. Well, this fellow, Johannes Kuppel, he's not a radical. I don't even know if he's a liberal. He's somebody who saw what was going on and spoke truth about it. And I think, his view has to be taken very seriously. And I especially feel that way because it coincides with my own view. I think that he basically goes right to the heart of the situation. 9/11 for him was a wake-up call, and it has been for many of us. The enemy, the enemy in the war on terrorism is the people. And it's quite a remarkable situation to contemplate. We didn't imagine our society was like this in earlier years, but now we apparently, we're in a new situation. How could it be that the enemy of the United States and of all the countries of the world is their own people and is the people of the world? Well, actually, one thing we need to wake up to, and I wanted to devote today's show to, is that this is actually a natural outgrowth of the nature of our society, our capitalist society. And this capitalist society that we're living in now, it's been in a situation of crisis, economic crisis, since about 1970. It's been a long series of crises, which I'll go into. So that now the inherent tensions within capitalist society, which is a class society with classes opposed to one another, trying to survive, one class trying to survive, the other trying to dominate completely. These inherent tensions and the contradictions, the internal contradictions that are always present in capitalist society, have reached a very extreme pitch. So I want to talk about capitalism a little bit and talk about the two classes that are contending in this situation and why one class, the people of the world, is the enemy of the ruling class. It's the two in capitalist society. There are two primary classes: the ruling class and the working class. I'm laying out a sketchy version of a Marxian analysis. Marx is extremely valuable in trying to understand the world we live in. Recommend him highly to people who like to read. In capitalist society, the two classes are in opposition. Their interests are opposed, basically. The society is based on private property, and especially private property in the means of production. That is, the machinery, the things that go to producing people's needs and desires. The machinery, the factories that make things, these are all held privately, so that there's control by the owners of the means of production over those who do not own the means of production and have nothing but their own ability to work, to sell, in order to have any kind of way of living. Under capitalism, the purpose of all this economic activity is not satisfying people's needs or satisfying people's desires, but is to make profits. Marx's technical term for this is the accumulation of value. Value is a theoretical concept that he uses, which explains a lot of different things. Value is the basis of money. Commodities that sell, they have prices. Those prices are based on the values of those commodities. So what is value? Value in Marx's analysis, the value of a commodity is a measure of the socially necessary labor time that went into its creation. How much time, how much human labor time was involved in the creation of the commodity, is its value, and that's expressed phenomenologically as money. And the accumulation of money, value in the money form, is the accumulation of profit. And that's the purpose behind it. So capitalists, they invest in a line of production, some particular thing that they make, because it's profitable. If it's not profitable, they'll bail on it and go do something else. So when capitalist enterprises become unproductive, or unprofitable, I should say, they're closed down, people are fired, they lose, workers lose their jobs, and the capitalist moves on to something else. So it's human labor that's the source of value and the source of profit. And there's an internal contradiction in capitalism, which is the cause of continual crisis, which is that because of the pressure on all capitalist enterprises to be profitable and to outcompete their rivals, they do everything they can to cut back on their labor costs. And the principal way this is done is by developing machinery that can take over for people. So over time, people are thrown out of productive work and replaced by machinery. But the thing is, machines do not create value. Only people create value. So that there's this contradiction, which capital in trying to accumulate profit throws out the very source of future profit by eliminating workers and replacing them with machinery. So over time, there is what's called the trend of profits to fall. The profit rates fall over time, and so it's a continual scramble for capitalists to keep their enterprises profitable. And what has happened, well, I'll get into that in more detail in a bit here. So let's just look at the general impact of these tendencies, these contradictions, and these tendencies of capitalism. Cyclical recessions are a common feature. Boom years, bust years, boom years, bust years. In the 19th century, there was about a 10-year cycle, went through most of the 19th century, of boom followed by bust. Some of these recessions are very severe and go into depressions. These are much longer periods and much more severe. Stock market crashes. And then this can lead in extreme periods to wars and to rebellions and revolutions. The nature of life in capitalist society, according to a Marxian analysis with which I agree, is basically class war. It's a continual battle between the two principal classes over the terms of social existence. And work, this wage labor that we're all required to do, this is a form of social control. We're required to work, and as long as we're at work, then we're contributing to the reproduction of this set of social relations, of this class setup, and we're actually working against our own interests. Now I want to talk a little bit about the history of capitalism in the 20th century that led up to 9/11, because I think it's pertinent to understanding 9/11. So I'll try and be real sketchy here, because I've been a little bit long-winded to this point. I don't want to go this show, to go into yet a third show. In the period 1914 to 1945, from the beginning of the First World War to the end of the Second World War, it was a continual crisis period. 2 major wars, millions of people killed, a huge depression in between the 2 wars, and there was this one period in the 20s which was sort of a boom period, but a lot of that was based on speculative activity and finance, chicanery and Ponzi schemes, just like what's been going on since 9/11. That whole period, 1914 to 1945, was a crisis period. But the result of it, at the end of it, after World War II, so much old machinery and factories had been renovated or destroyed by war production or by being bombed into non-existence, that new machinery, new methods of production came into use, and the U.S. Built up Germany and built up Japan after the war, and profitability was restored. The cost of the things that people need to live, the cost of food, the cost of clothing, of consumer goods like, refrigerators and cars, all declined because of the increasing productivity that the new generation of technological developments had brought about. And so there was a period after World War II, from 1945 to approximately 1970, maybe not quite that long, when workers seemed to be relatively prosperous, especially in the industrial countries. I'm going to take a sip of water here, just a second. So the prosperity, the post-war prosperity, it really peaked in the late 60s. And it coincided with a period of radical contestation in the United States and in Europe and actually around the world. There, of course, was the anti-war movement. Excuse me, folks. And there was the anti-materialistic counterculture where many millions of people just decided they didn't want to buy new things and didn't want to work long hours and preferred to work part-time or not work at all, moved out to the country. And there were radical political movements in the U.S. and especially in Europe. In the U.S., there was a wildcat strike wave in the 50s and 60s. Since my throat's bugging me, what I think I'll do is take a 1-minute break here, play a little bit of music, try and get my throat back under control, and come right back to you. Hang on, folks. Again, I'm still here. So in the late 60s and the early 70s, there were radical political movements like the Diggers in the Netherlands, the Autonomen in Germany, Autonomia in Italy, and as I said, wildcat strikes. And this level of, of course, and then the events in France, May and June 1968 in France, which was essentially a 6-week general strike that definitely posed the possibility of revolution. And the result of this was that the ruling class in the U.S. and Western Europe was very scared, and this is precisely when the Operation Gladio, the terrorist attacks under Operation Gladio, started. The first big bombing in Italy was in December 1969. The whole series of bombings in Italy into the mid-'80s, and other related atrocities carried out by the state in other Western European countries, all of this organized by the CIA through NATO. And next week, Daniele Ganser is going to be on the show with me, and we're going to talk about Operation Gladio across Europe in some detail. And the purpose of these attacks was to characterize this radical left upsurge as, associated with terrorism. And so these attacks were blamed on the left, and the result was that thousands of radical leftists were imprisoned and charged with having been involved in these terrorist attacks. Many of them were in prison for many years. And of course, many other kinds of attacks on the working class and the